I call the Honourable Ruth Dyson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I say to the member who's just resumed his seat before I talk specifically to clause 3 that I think that is a really important question, because it does come to the heart of why this legislation is being introduced, what they're hoping to achieve, and obviously why we're doing it under urgency. But Mr. Chairman, I want to address my contribution in relation to clause 3. Principal Act amended. This Act amends the KiwiSaver Act 2006 to 3 points. The first point is, what was the purpose of the Principal Act? What was the point of that legislation as passed in 2006? The second is, what is the purpose of this amendment that we're debating? And the third point, that gets again to the question that was just raised by my colleague from the Green Party, is why are we doing this under urgency? Well, I like others, have referred to the legislation itself. I referred back to the Hansard of the KiwiSaver legislation in 2006 and found two really interesting points that I'd like to draw to the attention of the House. The first is some comments that Michael Cullen made when he introduced the legislation. He said the KiwiSaver bill represents a landmark in social and economic legislation. Saving and investing is the foundation of the future wealth of our country and of us as individuals. KiwiSaver adds a new important element in the savings landscape, providing a vehicle to encourage all working New Zealanders to set aside a portion of their earnings to fund their long-term income security. It sounds pretty good to me. He went on to describe how it was the third in a set of measures that the government of the time had introduced to restore the integrity and security for older New Zealanders. The first was restoring the level of superannuation. I heard Minister Jerry Brownlee this morning crowing about how National had put the rate of superannuation, or the level of superannuation, up every year in the last 7 years. Well, that's good. It's the law. So I would hope that that's what they did, actually. And when we were in government, we made it the law, because the previous National government had cut the level of superannuation to a point where older New Zealanders just couldn't exist on what their level of superannuation was. The second part of this in the Principal Act, the second tenet, was obviously establishing the New Zealand Superannuation Fund, a fund that I know hasn't received any contribution for years under the National Government. Another key point in our social and economic security for the future. No contributions under the National Government. Tax cuts for the wealthiest New Zealanders.
Order.
But nothing for the New Zealand Superannuation Fund. And obviously the KiwiSaver scheme, as set up by the principal legislation, was the third tenet in that. Mr. Speaker, if I go to the votes on the primary legislation, the parties that voted for it were the New Zealand Labour Party, New Zealand First, the Green Party, United Future and Progressive. All voted for the introduction of KiwiSaver in the principal legislation that we're discussing under clause 3. The parties that voted against the establishment of a savings scheme that was so vital to our social and economic future, the parties that voted against it were the New Zealand National Party. Shock. Is everyone shocked to hear that? The Māori Party and ACT.
That's disappointing.
Well, that was 2006. Not a lot has changed in that time, except the numbers, unfortunately. So those are the parties that voted for and against it. So this legislation, in my view, goes absolutely against the point of the Principal Act. And other contributions earlier in this debate have asked that very question. What is the status of an amendment to an Act which actually undermines the primary purpose of the Principal Act? Because in my view, what the KiwiSaver Budget Measures Bill does is undermine the fundamental purpose of the Principal Act. We call it an amendment in this debate. That's how it's described in clause 3 of the bill. But it takes away the very incentive that was at the heart of changing the savings culture in New Zealand and making it more possible for people to see the value of savings, particularly people for whom saving is very hard. Mr Chairman, I'm not Mr Chairman.
Jamie Lee Ross.